Hello, hello, it's me, Arden Lee. Today I want to talk about how to heal from depression. Before I get started into that topic, I would love to remind you to like and subscribe to my videos. I would love to see you here more often. And, let me know in the comments what kind of things you want to hear about. Over here on this channel, we talk about self-improvement, belief optimization, getting happy, being successful, and all of our behavioral motivations, the analysis of the choices that we make both consciously and unconsciously that lead to our results. So if there's anything you'd like to hear about that, I'd love to hear from you. I want to talk today about healing from depression. That's probably a way longer subject that I can fit into a video on YouTube, but what I'm going to do is give my top 3 tips. I healed myself of depression and anxiety. I had been diagnosed with generalized depression, anxiety, and some people, that I saw sort of like to throw around some, do you have a personality disorder? Are you borderline? No one was ever quite comfortable slapping me with the label, but just being transparent here about my medical psychiatric history. When I was living in New York, I was on all kinds of meds. I've been on Zoloft, Wellbutrin, Klonopin, Trazodone for sleep. I often self-medicated with Benadryl. I was really depressed and upset that I wasn't going to be able to control my actions or my behavior. If I was really wanted to jump out of my skin, anxious, I would take a Benadryl to knock me out, and I'd just be like, I know I can't hurt any of my relationships or myself or other people if I'm asleep. So by hurt, of course, I mean like post dumb shit on Facebook or send texts that I shouldn't be sending. I wasn't in danger of physically harming anyone else, although sometimes I was in danger of physically harming myself. I was a self-harmer for many years. I have not self-harmed since May of 2015, and before that I had about 5 years under my belt. Unfortunately, I relapsed once in 2015. So that's just to give you a little bit of my history. And I can self-report. I can just tell you I was miserable. I was like, why? It was like, why me? Why? I try so hard to be a good person. I try to succeed in all the ways the world is telling me to succeed. I spend so much time doing things for other people, making myself into an attractive person, succeeding in the ways that the world is telling me that I should. I was a published author before the age of 30. I was a lingerie model, all this stuff. And I was like, why am I being treated so badly? Why am I so unhappy? And, I'm not going to say that my experience is universal. I'm not going to say that, I know that if you're a person with depression right now, and if I'm coming onto this video being like super happy and being like, I cured my depression without the aid of medication, and you can too, I know that's going to turn you off. So I would just ask, just bear with me, because I've been where you've been. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to give you just 3 tips, and they're big overall, lifestyle tips. It's not a silver bullet, but I can express them to you in ways that are very simple and that I believe are easily implementable. It's not easy, like, for the change in your life to be instant, but it is things that you can start doing today to start making a change in your life. And if you stick with them, I can guarantee you're going to see really, really big changes. So I just want to let you know that I've been where you are, and and it sucks a lot. And when I was there, I felt powerless. I felt like I was doing everything that people told me to do to cure depression. People were like, you should exercise, and I was like, I literally take parkour twice a week, and like, you should get some fresh air. Yeah, I walk there. I live in New York. I walk everywhere. And my mom would always be like, you should do something nice for yourself. And I'm like, what? Take a fucking bath? Do you think like taking a fucking bath is going to heal my depression? You want me to do something nice for myself? That would be, that would be ridding the world of me, because I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. I don't want to endure all of this suffering and pain. So I'm just letting you know that, because I'm not being cavalier about this. It's serious. It's incredibly serious. And I couldn't see what I couldn't see back then. You know, I didn't understand. I couldn't see above where where the changes that I could have made at that point would have helped me. So I'm gonna give 3 of them today, and I hope that they help you too. The first tip I'm gonna give is immediately call back your power from any toxic relationships. And that sounds, easier said than done. But here's what this requires. It requires knowing when something is making you feel bad. And with my clients that I work with now, and even, thinking of myself when I was depressed, when you're in so much pain for so long, your body starts to sometimes desensitize. Desensitization is one of the possible responses to trauma. So maybe if you've had trauma in your life, certainly what happened to me is I had trauma in my life. My body learned, like, hey, we can just not feel this. We can just shut off everything, and then we don't have to deal with this. Overstimulation is an understatement. With all of these incredibly unpleasant stimuli associated with my trauma. So I did that. I turned my body off, and I thought that it was because I thought that doing that made me tough, and I thought that the tougher I was, then, the more I'd be able to get through things. And certainly I survived, but I was tough and I was depressed. So the first step of calling your power back from toxic relationships is resensitizing and learning when things are making you feel bad. And this means that any relationship that you have, I want you to really tune into it. And if something feels off, if something feels wrong, you don't have to be in that relationship anymore. And crucially, in relationships where things feel bad and you feel like you're advocating for yourself and you feel like you're fighting for yourself to be treated like a nice, normal person, like treated with a modicum of basic human decency, which, let's face it, there are a lot of toxic relationships and friendships out there that's really what it feels like. You're advocating for just someone to treat you like a human being, like, people who use you, who cheat on you, who lie to you, who use you for their own purposes and then don't meet your needs, whatever that is. The first thing is to recognize this feels bad. This feels really bad. And we have trouble doing that sometimes because we think that having these people in our lives is important. Well, I'm in love with my boyfriend, or but that's my friend, or I need that person in my life because they're cooler than I am. Like, that's why they treat me badly. It's because I'm not that cool. It's like Gaston and LeFou. It's like we let people that we like or we admire sometimes treat us poorly, but sometimes those people have no character. We're just admiring something superficial about them. So the first thing is have the strength to let those people go. And for me, I was like, I didn't even care for a while. I was like, I could have no friends at all. It would be better than having friends in relationships like those. I could be celibate for the rest of my life, and it would be better than being in so much pain from people who are getting into relationships with me and then using me and hurting me. So I finally said no, and the fear will be there. The fear that you're just not going to have any friends that's a real fear. That's a very real fear. So I get that. And I can assure you that that even though you might go through that awkward phase of not having any friends, there are always better people out there. There are 8 billion people on the planet, and if you are a good person and you are someone who is trying to be better every day, you will ultimately attract people like that when you get rid of the parasites that are in your life. Right now, if you're a good person and people are treating you badly, it's because you see the best in them and you believe in them. And sometimes people just, they have to change of their own accord. They're not going to change because they see what you are. They're going to keep feeding off of you as long as you let them. So the first step is just get rid of your toxic relationships. Just cut them off. Just don't do that anymore. Be alone for a while if you have to, but I promise you that better people who are more of a match to you will start showing up. And sometimes we have those people in our lives that we actually take them for granted because we actually feel like people who like us. I know that I felt this way. I was like, I don't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member, you know. I don't want to date anyone who would date me, you know. So the people who were liked me or were into me, I was just like, I don't appreciate these people because I don't appreciate myself. So that's one of the first steps of that as well, is starting to understand that maybe there are people who are showing up for you already, but it's hard to see them when you're so focused on gaining the approval of the people who are withholding their approval from you. So sometimes it's possible that we actually have some great friends around us, but we ignore them because we're so caught up. And it's kind of like, you know, when you go to brunch with like that, you know, friend who's super amazing and supportive of you, but you're like sitting there texting the person you're in a toxic relationship with the whole time because you're addicted to that rush and you're not being present with your friends. Now, I was totally guilty of that for about a stretch of my life, maybe a year or two, you know, that it got really super toxic like that because I was in one of those addictive relationships, and it was like, you know, eventually I just had to cut it off. And I thought, you know, I'll never find another person who's better. And then I got away from it. I was like, oh my God, that person was horrible. Are you kidding me? So it is sometimes a step forward in blind faith. And you know, that can be difficult at first, but I'm here to let you know there are amazing things on the other side of it, and you absolutely can do that. So if someone is making you feel bad consistently, learn to know when you're feeling bad and be like, hey, this feels bad, I don't like this. And if they keep doing it, or they say like, well, what, my last girlfriend didn't feel like that was bad, or like, you know, what, you're just crazy, or you know, well, what am I supposed to do, XYZ, you know, like if you get any defensiveness from that, just be like, well, then no, I don't need you in my life. So that's the first tip I have for healing yourself from depression is cut off all your toxic relationships. I promise there will be other people there for you. My second tip for healing yourself of depression is find and pursue the things that make you happy. And they might not be the things that you think they are at first, but when you start to resensitize and you realize what's making you feel bad, you start to be able to pay attention to what's making you feel good too. And in terms of resensitizing and that emotional self-mastery, I want you to know I really encourage you to keep a mood journal. You know, there's also an app called Mood Meter that I encourage a lot of my clients to use, where, you know, you get to pick on a grid system kind of like how you're feeling that day. And importantly, you mark down what you were doing immediately before. So that way you get to look at that at the end of the week and you get to say, hey, wow, I'm actually happiest right after I've done this thing. And I feel inspired when I talk to this person, and I feel, but wow, this person must have really drained my energy because I felt really like lethargic, or like this person I get really anxious around, you know, this is when I'm happy and this is when I'm not happy. When you start to realize that, you can start to make more decisions to curate your own happiness in the moment. So those things that do make you happy, where you're like, wow, I feel on fire, I feel like I can tackle the world today. Maybe you're depressed, maybe you don't ever feel like you're on fire or whatever, but when you feel that, at least that settledness, or that like, I feel all right now, or like, hey, maybe that was kind of fun, like it felt good to like grab a drink with my friend, or I like hanging out with this person, or this makes me feel like, like I have some cool ideas, or I have some hope for the future, or whatever. Make note of it, and increase those things. For me, it was like, getting involved in witchcraft was really inspirational to me, and I didn't think that it would be, because, I came from New York. I was a super big skeptic. I'm, certified in NLP and hypnosis, and I'm all about, there's such a fine line between NLP and hypnosis and witchcraft anyway, but I was very masculine, left-brained. I didn't want to acknowledge that that witchcraft could actually even have, an effect. But I started taking classes, and I started noticing, I was like, I feel really good in this community. I feel really good about participating and doing these things. It helps me to, express myself better. It helps me take control of my creative power. And so whatever that thing is, it could be, it could be a person, it could be an activity, but you want to really start making a very deliberate focus, even if it's like just a tiny improvement in your mood, even if it's the smallest thing ever. Just do the things that make you happy, do the things that contribute to your fulfillment, and just follow that path. And I guarantee, even if it's just the tiniest little spark at first, if you follow that spark, you can kindle it, and you can blow on it and give it energy, and it will grow. It absolutely will grow. And soon, you'll be finding, like, soon you'll just be feeling like like when you feed that happiness deliberately, you'll really be stepping it up and kind of growing that happiness like it's a plant. It's like something might start out as a tiny sprout, but if you just give it water and sunlight and you nurture it every day, then it's going to start growing. And it's the same thing with with your mood. It's the same thing with your self-love, your self-worth, and definitely with your happiness. And the third thing that I would recommend, I thought of 3 things and now I can only think of the first 2. The first one was cut off your toxic relationships. Second one is do the things that that make you happy, and finding your purpose in life. And the third one I was going to say, well, I actually thought of a fourth one, so let me say the fourth one, and then I'll see if I can remember the third one by the end of it. The fourth one is create environments that you love. The best investment that I ever made when I moved to Los Angeles was to invest my time and money, but I want to really emphasize the fact that I didn't spend like a crazy amount of money. I spent more time and research and effort, like Pinteresting and mood boarding, for my apartment. I love my apartment so much. I spent more time, honestly, like half of my furniture is from IKEA. Like, it looks fancy, but it's really like my wine rack is from Target. It's like it's not like yes, I do have a certain amount of privilege that I can buy my own furniture, but I'm letting you know, like, I'm not extraordinarily wealthy. I just happen to look at everything I wanted, and I bought it during the Memorial Day sales, and half of the stuff that I have in my apartment is from places like Ross and Target, where you can get things pretty cheap. So I put that effort in. I created a space that I really love. I don't know if you guys have seen my apartment before, but I'll show you. I created this really lovely, I've got all my books and lots of candles. There's my wine rack, it's from Target. I framed that little Sherlock Holmes quote that's on the wall, that I literally downloaded off the internet for like $2. So yeah, and it makes me happy. I really like being here. I like working from home. I like being in my space, and it's a really good sanctuary for me to be at the end of the day. So that really contributes a lot to my mood, because I actually like being by myself. That means that I don't need to distract myself with toxic relationships, or going out and partying, or what have you. Okay, I had to look at my notes, but I remembered. The last thing that I advise in terms of of healing yourself of depression is rewrite the narratives of your past. The thing that kept me so much in my pain for so long was that I really had a belief that these things kept happening in cycles. I'm always rejected. I'm always abandoned. I'm always in pain. People are always fucking me over. And I had so much pain regarding the things that I'd gone through in my past. And finally, when I really felt called to heal myself, when I really set that intention to heal, I looked back at everything and I said, you know what? Those relationships that I was in before where I got hurt, that was, I have another video on my channel about, were you in a toxic, did you waste time in a toxic relationship, or did you go to narcissist school and get your degree in avoiding all of that in the future? And I looked at my life and I said, you know what? I've had all the pain that I can possibly experience. And I touched the hot stove so many times, making all these choices that led to outcomes that were really unfavorable for me. All the people that I chose to date, all the friends that I chose to have friendships with, all the things that I chose to pursue that ultimately, came back and bit me in the ass, and I finally said, I'm done with that. I'm going to change my relationship to it. I'm going to change my relationship to pain fundamentally. I'm going to decide from now on that pain is boring. Pain is not something that I want to experience anymore. And rather than saying, why does this keep happening to me? Why does this keep happening to me? I finally said, I've experienced all the pain that I want to experience in this lifetime. It's time for me to really start studying happiness, understanding happiness, and like that's interesting. What is that like? What does that look like? How can I try to embody that so I can experience it? How can I how can I look into that? How can I stop seeing pain everywhere that I go, and how can I start creating happiness on my own. And all the bad things that happened to me, I looked at them and I said, you know what, they brought me here to where I am today. Here's all the things I learned. I'm so happy now because I get to teach this to other people. I get to help them, and I know where they've been. You know, if you were listening to me right now and I just had a perfect life, you'd be like, fuck this bitch. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's never experienced the kind of pain that I've been through. And maybe I haven't. I'm sure, you know, everyone's pain is unique and different. Everyone goes through their own path. But I have certainly experienced a fuck ton of pain and trauma in my life, and a whole bunch of, whole bunch of really, really terrible stuff that I had to pull myself out of. And but I did it, and now I get to teach other people the way forward. And I can't think of anything that is more rewarding than getting to contribute to the levels of overall joy on the planet, that people can come to me and be hurting and be in so much pain, and I can try and help them. And in so many cases, in the vast majority of people I work with, I would almost say 201, everyone I work with ends up feeling at least better on some level. And some people feel completely transformed. Some people really go all the way and they really put the work in, and they come out, and I hear these wonderful things now. And so I look back and I say, I wouldn't be able to do that now if I hadn't been through that pain. I'm so glad that pain is over with now. I'm so glad that I'm not still in it, but I'm so happy that I went through it, because now I get to live this life that is really, really fulfilling and rewarding, and I'm really grateful. So I get to change my relationship to the events that happened in my past. That doesn't mean that I excuse them. I don't think that they were right. I don't, it's not like I'm all like super love and light about them, like, oh, everything was all fine. I still can feel anger. I can feel anger toward people who abused me. I feel anger toward, systemic injustice and abuse that is happening currently throughout our culture. If anything, the pain and trauma that I suffered helps me to embody that righteous anger. But from that righteous anger, I can come from that place of I'm not going to enable this anymore. I'm not going to participate in it anymore. We may not live in a just world, but I know the choices that I can make for myself, and I can choose to be around people who are going to treat me well, and I can hold those standards. And when someone's a fucking asshole to me, I can say, you know what? You don't get to be in my life if you're going to be like that. And it's so much better. So not all kinds of depression are externally motivated. Certainly there are, as I understand it, there are some instances of chemical depression where it really is something that lives in your brain. Although I would say everything kind of lives in our brains, right? Everything. Our brains are part of our bodies. They're not separate. And, I think that more causes of depression are external than not. If you look into the work of Johann Hari, he talks about this. He says that there's about, 9 known categories anyway, of causes of depression. He says out of those 9 categories, 7 of them are externally motivated. They don't come from inside you. It's not something that's wrong with you. It's the fact that you're in a world, you exist in an environment that is hurting you, and that environment is hurting you and at the same time telling you that it's not, or telling you that it's impossible to want better for yourself. For example, if you're, being abused by someone, there's so many times where, the very line they use is like, you're never going to do better than me, like no one's ever going to love you, and you start to believe that, and of course you'd be depressed. But that actually also happens on societal levels too, because our happiness is not really, our happiness doesn't put money in anyone's pockets. Our happiness, except our own, but our happiness doesn't, help Jeff Bezos of Amazon become a billionaire. He wants us unhappy, so we keep ordering things online to fill that gap, right? That we engage in this consumerist culture. Our government wants us to not be too happy, because then we're not going to sign up for the military, because people who are really happy and really in their bodies and really making choices about their lives, probably aren't going to be very warlike people. People who are in their empowerment, who have called back their creative power from all of the toxic relationships that that have been keeping them down are also not going to want to work that shitty cubicle job. You know, they're not going to want to sit there in the Amazon warehouse and exhaust themselves if they can help it. So they're going to, you know, to the extent that they can, they're going to call their power back and start creating lives for themselves that are sustainable and that make them happy. So we get gaslighted by our abusive partners too, but I want you to realize that we also get gaslighted by society into believing that a lot of our conditions are normal, and they're just not. And when you start to really resensitize yourself and start to work toward your own happiness, you're going to, you know, you're not gonna buy those expensive shoes anymore. I used to buy so many expensive shoes thinking they would fix my problems, you know, and they never did. Advertising lies. So, you know, so it's really important to take our power back for our own sake, and stop just kind of going with the lies that so much of society tells us, and wanting to keep us down, and wanting to keep us dependent upon consumerism, you know, and certainly big pharma is part of that. I'm not anti-meds by any stretch of the imagination. I think that being anti-meds is kind of like being anti-fire extinguishers, because sometimes you just need to put out a fire so that it doesn't completely consume you. But I also think that there are too many people who think that a fire extinguisher will help them rebuild their house, and unfortunately that's just not true. That's not, there's nothing that can rebuild you except for yourself. And that sounds daunting, but it's absolutely possible. It's totally, you know, it's absolutely something that you can do. So those are my 4 tips. Those are my 4 tips for healing from depression. Cut off your toxic relationships. Spend more time doing the things that actually make you happy, not the things that you just think will make you happy. Spend the time doing the things that you can feel in your body make you happy as soon as you do them. Create an energetic space that makes you happy. And finally, change your narrative to your past. Change the story that you tell yourself in your mind about what your past means, and whether it has to keep happening or not. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.